You know, the Gospel of John is one of the most profound books ever written, but it's got this fascinating secret. It powerfully teaches a huge theological idea, the doctrine of election, but it does it without ever using the main words you'd expect to see. So, how on earth does it do that? Well, that's what we're going to dive into today. I mean, think about it. This is one of the great head scratchers in all of theology, right? On one hand, you've got this idea of a totally sovereign God who's in control of everything. But on the other hand, we all have this undeniable experience of making our own real choices. So how can both of those things be true at the same time? The Gospel of John, it doesn't try to hide from this mystery. Nope, it leans right into it. Okay, so here's the thing. If you were to do a word search in the Gospel of John for terms like predestined or election, the kind of words the Apostle Paul uses all the time, you'd come up empty, zilch. So that begs the question, right? If the specific words aren't there, does that mean the whole idea is missing too? Well, according to theologian Dr. Robert Peterson, the answer to that is a big fat no. So to get our heads around this, we have to sidestep something called the word concept fallacy. It sounds fancy, but it's actually a really simple mistake. It's the error of thinking that just because a specific word isn't there, the idea behind it must be missing too. And Dr. Peterson gives a perfect example. John never ever uses the word church, not once. But does anyone really think he isn't talking about the church when he uses these incredible images like a vine and its branches or a shepherd and his sheep? Of course he is. And this is where it gets really, really cool. Instead of just dropping theological keywords on us, John does something way more creative. He paints three distinct pictures, three powerful metaphors that, when you put them all together, build this incredibly profound idea of election. So let's go find them. Let's unpack each one. All right, our first picture. This one zooms in completely on the role of God the Father. What John shows us here is that salvation isn't just something we choose. First and foremost, it's a divine gift given from the Father directly to the Son. And this verse from John chapter 6 just lays it out perfectly. All that the Father gives me will come to me, and whoever comes to me I will never cast out. Did you catch the order there? It's crucial. First, the Father gives. Then, as a direct result, those people will come to Jesus. The whole thing starts with God's initiative. So here's the absolute key takeaway for this first picture. In John's way of thinking, the Father giving people to the Son is the bedrock, the foundation of everything else. See, it's not that people believe and then God says, okay, you're a gift now. It's the other way around. They are a gift, and because of that, they will believe. And you see this idea pop up all over John's gospel, especially when Jesus is praying in chapter 17. Okay, let's move on to picture number 2. And this one, wow, this one is totally unique. In fact, Dr. Peterson points out that what we're about to see here is found absolutely nowhere else in the entire Bible. And this time, the camera shifts from the Father over to the Son. Listen to what Jesus says directly to his disciples. He just completely flips the script on what you'd expect. You did not choose me, but I chose you. He's saying, look, it wasn't your idea that kicked this whole thing off. It was mine. Now, their choice to follow was absolutely real. Don't get me wrong. But it was a response to a much earlier, much more foundational choice that Jesus himself made. And the significance of this? It's huge. I mean, according to top scholars like D.A. Carson, this is literally the only place in the entire Bible where Jesus is shown to be the direct author of election. John is painting this picture of Jesus not just as the one we have faith in, but as the one who actually starts that faith in us. He's the sovereign initiator. All right, picture number 3. And honestly, this one might be the most mind-bending of them all. It's this idea that people can have an identity as belonging to God before they even believe. Yeah, you heard that right. So the key word to latch onto here is sheep. Listen to the logic Jesus uses. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. See what's happening? It's not that they follow his voice and then they become a sheep. It's that they already are his sheep, and because of that deep down identity, they're able to recognize and follow his voice. This right here, this puts the whole paradox into sharp focus. All through the Gospel of John, people are held responsible for not believing. That's a huge theme. But then you get to chapter 10, and Jesus says something that seems to turn it all on its head. He doesn't say, you're not my sheep because you don't believe. He says the exact opposite. You do not believe because you are not my sheep. This is exactly what Dr. Peterson calls an antecedent identity. It means your status as one of God's own is a pre-existing reality. Think of it this way. Your act of believing doesn't create that identity. It reveals it. It's the result, the evidence of who you already were. Okay, so we've walked through these three amazing pictures: the Father gives, the Son chooses, and people have this identity as sheep before they even believe. So, what do we do with all that? How in the world are we supposed to reconcile God's total sovereignty with our very real, very genuine human responsibility? Well, here's the big takeaway. The Gospel of John doesn't actually give us a neat little formula to solve the puzzle. It's not trying to. It's doing something much more profound. It's holding both of these truths, God's absolute plan and our genuine choices, together in this dynamic tension. John just puts them both on the table as 100% true, without trying to explain exactly how they fit together for our finite minds. So instead of a simple solution, Dr. Peterson suggests we think of it like having guardrails for this mystery, all drawn from the text itself. First, this is not fatalism. We're talking about a personal God, not some cold, impersonal force. Second, we have to always affirm that humans are genuinely responsible for their choices. And third, we have to accept that, in the end, the Creator's ultimate will is never going to be frustrated by the creature. Those are the boundaries we have to stay within. At the end of the day, the Gospel of John doesn't try to make this mystery smaller or easier to understand. If anything, it makes our awe of it even deeper. It leaves us with this massive picture of God and a much more profound sense of our own place in his grand story. So maybe the final question isn't, how do we solve this paradox? Maybe the real question is, how do we learn to live faithfully inside of it?